When does the clock start?
When you tell us.
Oh, okay. I'm going to turn this a little bit. Okay, I'm ready. On any given day in America, 1 in 5 Americans are actually doing well. They have experienced positive emotions. They are engaged in their day-to-day life, like with mindfulness. They are, they have high-quality relationships. They find meaningfulness easy, and they're accomplishing a lot. On that same day, 1 in 10 Americans really could use a therapy session. They are anxious, they're depressed, it's debilitating, they're in the throes of anxiety, and they're just suffering a great deal, and they are the people that we talk about when we say the person has some mental health issues. That leaves 70% of us in this category that psychologists call languishing. And yeah, languishing people are not depressed, but they're not that happy either. And that's most of us. I shouldn't be here tonight. I grew up on a farm in Iowa, and I was good with numbers, and I thought what I was going to do in life was become a math teacher and teach in Australia because it was a long way away from Iowa. I was really good in drafting in high school, and all of that was ended by this right here. When I was between my freshman and sophomore year in high school, my brother's fiancée, she was 21, committed suicide. She shot herself. So I spent much of my high school years trying to wrap my head around not just suicide, but also I wanted to grow up to be like her because she looked like she was the only happy adult. My high school English teacher suggested what I was interested in was called psychology. So I went to Loras College. And instead of studying math, I studied psychology. I met a lot of psychologists. I think they had I have 60 credits undergraduate in psychology. I also went to therapy, had 3 sessions. I'm the one on the couch. And that was helpful too, but I did notice something in comparing the two, that I did get quite a bit out of the classes. I also liked the psychologist that I went to see. He was the guy who ran the counseling center on campus. Fast forward 30 years, 3 degrees, living in Atlanta, living in Charlottesville, Virginia, doing a bunch of stuff to get a PhD in clinical psych, and I ended up where a lot of people, where a lot of us end up, which is in a bar in Milwaukee, with our friends, who were asking things of me every time I would show up. I realized that the fact that I was a psychologist, the conversation changed, and they were asking me stuff about their lives. So that was, what was born was a thing called Shrink and Drink Live. We went to, 5 years ago we started Cranky Al's in Wauwatosa. Last year we went to Waukesha and to Bayview. And this is what happens. At a Shrink and Drink night, people show up, they get their pizza or their salad, whatever, they get a beer. And then they're hanging out with their buddies, as you can see. This is a pretty typical mix. I mean, you can see this is multiple Shrink and Drinks, various venues. And that's a typical thing. This is the graphic that Key Wisconsin out in Waukesha uses to explain to people what it's about. I think if you have a chance to see David Letterman or me, you should go, but I think I am a little better than Dr. Phil. So, given that choice, I would come to a Shrink and Drink if I were you. So people, it's a very simple directive. We say to people, what's on your mind? And then they're scratch pieces of paper. And the person in the first 3 slides, Lisa, who's here, collects them. She puts them in an order that makes some sense. She hands them to me, and then I answer them. So you can see these are actual questions that were asked. Some of them are about drinking problems. Not very many of them about the priesthood. But there is a category of questions that are basically about personal development, self-control. Not very many about religion, though there were some about the priest pedophile scandal. And people are interested in a psychologist take on current events for some reason. Certainly the biggest category of questions are relationships, how to get along with your adult siblings, what do you do with teenagers, what if you're going to be raising your child's child and parent, and there are always lots of questions about young love. And these are all people I know. And there's a lot of questions about sex and marriage and blended families and taking care of your elderly parents And again, none of these people are in a category that we would say, oh, this is mental illness. On the other hand, they're probably not going to show up in a psychologist's office to ask some of these very basic, and to me, they're very basic questions. There's also a category that people ask about, which are workplace issues. And I don't know how many hundreds of questions we've had about the workplace, but they're all the same question. How do I get along with a person at work who's really negative? What do you do with negativity? It's some version of that. That and the boss who doesn't know how to structure people. So that's been going on for 5 years. 6 months ago, we took this online, and there's a thing now called Shrink and Drink, the radio show. It's the second project in the Shrink and Drink concept. The anniversary was 6 months ago that we started. This week we passed 25,000 listens. To put that into context, that means doing Shrink and Drink live the way I'm doing it right now in 3 venues for 31 years. Wow. You throw in 30 years of experience and thousands of questions from thousands of people at Shrink and Drink Live and on the radio show, and you come up with an idea of what people need. And we have now hatched the third project, which you just saw, Shrink and Drink University. Those are the actual textbooks. Courses are once a month. And there are once a month textbook videos, workbooks that I write to go with it. And then the next project in the mix is Shrink and Drink, and a magazine for the iPad. And again, this is all about being able to bring scientific psychology to people. They shouldn't have to go to the university or to a psychologist's office for it. If you're at Shrink and Drink Live ever, this upper right-hand quadrant is the single answer to the #1 question that is asked if you were just stacking up the questions and looking for the same question. Not the variety of questions which I just gave you, but the single question, and that's the answer. And if you've been at Shrink and Drink Live, I actually have people yell out the answer when I read the question. The question is, how many times a week should people have sex? And the answer